The Kidnapping by Omar Cuellar. Richard was at Max's house in Burlington, Vermont. 3 months earlier, Max's wife had left for good. The decision to separate had been very easy for Max. He simply no longer cared about his wife. Now Richard was sitting in the living room, playing video games with Max on an old console, thinking that they were both getting a bit too old to be playing video games. The living room was spotless, except for the snacks and the numerous bottles of beer, whiskey, tequila, and vodka scattered across the carpet and on one of the coffee tables in front of the large flat-screen TV. Every now and then, Richard glanced sideways at Max and could hardly believe what he was seeing. A clean-shaven, neatly combed Max, a showered and well-dressed Max, a happy, cheerful Max, a peaceful, content Max. A Max completely focused on the game. "Hide behind the wall," Max shouted, utterly absorbed in the game. They were playing a shooter. Richard had no idea what the game was called. It was the first time he had ever played it. He had told Max to choose the game, hoping to cheer him up, but now Richard realized it hadn't been necessary. Max was already happy. Max no longer seemed to need anyone's support, and the worst part was that he had been like this for weeks. 3 weeks earlier, when Richard had come to visit, Max had also acted very strangely, almost euphoric, Richard thought. Although he had asked Max if he was okay, he never got a straight answer, just jokes and comments clearly meant to change the subject. That was classic Max. This time, Richard had arrived convinced that only alcohol would get Max to open up. They had started drinking early and eaten very few snacks. Richard's cheeks and chest felt hot. His whole body felt extremely relaxed. At that moment, he decided to stop drinking and began eating more snacks. He got up to get a glass of water from the kitchen. "Where are you going?" Max snapped, annoyed. "They're going to kill you." "For water?" As he walked to the kitchen, Richard started to sway slightly and thought maybe he had drunk too much. He reached the kitchen and stayed there for a long while, drinking several glasses of water. He lost track of time. He was quite drunk, though he didn't fully realize it. He was probably there for 20 or 30 minutes. While drinking the water, he looked around the kitchen. He was surprised at how clean and immaculate it was. Even his own kitchen didn't look this good. After 4 glasses of water, he started feeling a bit better and decided to go back to Max. Max was still drinking, but remained completely focused on the game. Richard couldn't understand it. Now that he himself was drunk, he could barely aim properly in the game. Yet the more Max drank, the better he played. That was when Richard realized his plan had failed, and he learned 2 things. 1. Max was not one of those people who cried and became emotional when drinking. Max was one of those who got excited and euphoric. 2. This was the first time he had ever gotten drunk with his best friend. Seeing that his plan had backfired, Richard went back to the kitchen and brought a pitcher of water so Max could hydrate. "Here, drink a glass," Richard said, offering him the water. "No, I'm fine like this, thanks." Max pushed the glass away with one hand while continuing to play with the other. He was still deeply concentrated on the game. "Come on," Richard insisted. "Fine." Max brought the glass to his mouth and immediately felt an overwhelming urge to vomit. He jumped up from his seat, ran to the bathroom, locked the door, and started throwing up. Richard followed and waited outside the door. "Are you okay?" he asked. He waited and heard the vomiting. The sound was awful, like a dinosaur throwing up. After about a minute, the vomiting stopped. "Want more water?" Richard asked. "I don't feel good at all," Max managed to say with difficulty. "I'll stay here a while longer until I get it all out. You, in the meantime, keep playing. Don't let them kill me," he slurred. Unbelievable. He's still thinking about the game, Richard thought. Of course, Richard wasn't going back to play to keep Max's character alive. Video games had stopped mattering to him more than 20 years ago. Although he knew age had nothing to do with whether someone loved or hated video games, the truth was that he detested them because his eyes got tired very quickly. Still, he had never dared tell Max. Instead of returning to the game, the idea came to him to inspect the house and make sure everything was in order. So far, the living room and kitchen were immaculate, something Richard still couldn't believe. He went upstairs using the wooden staircase. There was a wide carpeted hallway. If he remembered correctly, Daniel's room was to his right. Curious about how the room looked, he tried to go in, but the door was locked, so he gave up and continued down the carpeted hallway. Suddenly, Richard heard someone banging and struggling against the door from inside Daniel's room, as if trying to escape. In that instant, Richard understood everything. He realized why Max had been behaving so strangely for the past few weeks. Max finally did it. Max finally kidnapped a child, he thought. Terrified, Richard went back to the door of Daniel's room and tried to open it, but couldn't. "Stop making noise, or he'll hear us," Richard whispered in the quietest voice he had ever used in his life. "I'm going to get you out of there." He hurried to Max's bedroom and searched every drawer for a key that might work. In the last drawer he found one. He had no idea if it would fit, but he had nothing to lose by trying. He grabbed the key and ran back to Daniel's room. "Don't make any noise. I've got the key," Richard assured him in a low voice. Richard was shaking with fear. He swore the terror had instantly sobered him up. With a trembling hand, he inserted the key and managed to unlock the door. When he entered the room, an even deeper, more heartbreaking fear took hold of him. This fear was pure terror. There on the bed sat no ordinary child. On the bed sat someone covered entirely by a white sheet, with two large eye-shaped holes cut out. The figure wasn't very tall. Thick black duct tape was wrapped around the entire body, apparently preventing the person from removing the sheet. Terrified, Richard approached the figure dressed as a ghost. The ghost began to cry and shouted, "Let me go." Horrified, Richard stumbled backward until he hit the wall, breathing rapidly, until he finally processed what was happening. "Daniel," he shouted, and rushed toward the boy. The first thing he did was hug him tightly. Then he pulled the sheet off with ease. The boy kept sobbing, but after another long, firm hug, he began to calm down. "Let me go," he murmured. "Daniel, what is all this?" Richard asked, completely confused. On one of the walls hung a small rectangular mirror. Daniel stood up and slowly walked toward it. "No!" Max let out a terrible scream as he raced up the stairs as if he hadn't drunk a single drop. When he burst into the room, his son Daniel was already looking at his own reflection in the mirror. And then he began to disintegrate, turning to dust right before his father's eyes. Max collapsed and burst into violent sobs because he knew he would never again have another chance to kidnap the ghost of his dead son.